In today's video, we are going to look at the spiritual horror of a certain religion and with the very intense raw camera footage associated with it, which shows the dark rituals involved. This video might disturb or upset some viewers, hence viewers' discretion is advised. Santeria. Also known as Lucumí, is an African diasporic religion that developed in Cuba during the late 19th century. This religion evolved during the transatlantic slave trade, when African slaves were taken away from their homelands by the Western European slave traders during the 16th century, and with some of the slaves being forced to work in the Caribbean sugar plantations. As a religion, the Santeria system of beliefs arose through the process of combining or merging the different religious beliefs that exist between the native Indian tradition of Spiritism, the traditional Yoruba religion of the Nigerian people in West Africa, and the Catholic form of Christianity. You see, during the earlier times, West African slaves, of whom majority were the Yorubas, learned that honoring their ancestral spirits, also known as the Orishas, was far safer if their Catholic Christian owners believed they were worshipping the saints instead. This was because Roman Catholicism was the only religion legally permitted on the island by the Spanish colonial government, hence the tradition of overlap between the two religions. Now, I would briefly tell you the beliefs of these combined religions to better help you understand how it leads to the very dark ritual practices involved. Spiritism relates to the relationship between spiritual beings and human beings, with the central tenet of Spiritism being in the belief in spiritual life. There is also the belief in reincarnation. From this perspective, humans and other living things are immortal spirits that temporarily inhabit physical bodies, and the spirit is eternal and continuously evolves and purifies through a series of necessary rebirths in the material world we live in, the purpose of which is to attain moral and intellectual improvement. It also asserts that disembodied spirits may have a beneficent or malevolent influence on the physical world, either through passive or active means. The Yoruba tribe traditional religion of Nigeria, also known as the Isese, have a belief that every thought and action of each person or any other being in the physical realm interact with the supreme force known as the Olodumare, who can also be referred to as the highest god. including all other living things, the earth itself, as well as with the other world in which smaller gods, spirits, and our ancestors exist. Hence, the Yoruba religion can be described as a complex form of belief in different smaller gods with a supreme but distant greater force which encompasses the whole universe. But unlike the polytheistic nature of the Isese or the Yoruba religion, the Catholic form of Christianity is monotheistic. It believes in only one supreme being called God. They believe in God the Father, God the Son, known as Jesus Christ, and God the Holy Spirit, the three persons in one God. There is also the belief in the holiness of the church as a place of worship and the communion of saints, who are the departed faithful considered close in holiness to the supreme God. Hence, through the blending in of the Christian religion is where Santeria seemed to get its name, as in English, the name Santeria means the way of the saints. The Roman Catholic influence in Santeria is most obvious in the way that many of the more than 400 Yoruba Orishas are associated with various Catholic saints, with all having similarities in what they stand for. For example, Saint Barbara of the Catholic Church is the patroness saint of armorers, artillerymen, military engineers, mathematicians, miners, and others who work with explosives because of her legend's association with lightning. Hence, she is often associated with the male Orisha known as Shango in the traditional Yoruba religion. He is said to embody justice, strength, and also associated with lightning and fire. Saint Lazarus of the Catholics is always called upon for healing, pain relief, and protection from illness, and he is worshipped in the Yoruba religion as Baba Aluaye, a deity associated with being the spirit of the earth and the healer of the sick. Saint Bridget of Ireland is the patroness saint of poetry, learning, healing, protection, blacksmithing, livestock, and dairy production. She is syncretized with Oya, a warrior goddess who is the Orisha of winds, lightning, violent storms, rebirth, and also the guardian of the dead. The Roman Catholic Saint Anthony of Padua, who is the patron of miracles and the protector of sterile poor women, travelers, sellers, and also who helps find lost and stolen articles, is associated with Elegua, the Orisha of crossroads. All ceremonies and rituals in Santeria must first have the approval of Elegua before progressing. Often depicted as a young man, he is said to serve as a link between man and the divine and said to have very great powers. The Virgin Mary of the Catholic Church, called the Mother of God, is often syncretized with a major water spirit from the Yoruba religion known as Yemoja. Regarded as the mother of all Orishas, she is seen as the patroness spirit of rivers, particularly the Ogun River in Nigeria, the oceans in Cuba, and within the Brazilian Orisa religions. Our Lady of Charity of the Catholics, worshipped across so many Catholic countries across the world, is regarded as the Marian title of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, and is also associated with the Oshun deity, who is the Yoruba goddess of the river, associated with divinity, femininity, fertility, beauty, water, yellow, sweets, money, and love. And the list goes on. Fusing these three religious beliefs together is where we get the Santeria belief. This is also something which is evident when you realize that in the country of Cuba, followers of Santeria are often Roman Catholics, and Catholic symbols are sometimes used in Santeria rituals. There is no central authority in control of Santeria, and as such, diversity exists among practitioners who are known as creyentes or believers. You see, the diversity is the major similarity it has with other religions in the way of having variant, which of course gives each denomination its uniqueness. We know for all denominations within Christianity, they have the Bible as their holy book, while the Muslims have the Quran as their holy scripture. Hinduism have the Vedas as their holy book. Even the Church of Satan have the Satanic Bible, which they use for their worship and rule of living, including many other countless religions. As for the followers of Santeria, they have no scriptures and their mixed beliefs are passed on by word of mouth or using handwritten notebooks known as libretas. It is said that the Santeria religion focuses on building relationships between human beings and these powerful but mortal spirits called Orishas, who are seen as a manifestation of the supreme or higher god. Followers believe that these spirits will give them help in life if they carry out the appropriate rituals, and these rituals would enable them to achieve the destiny that God had planned for them before they were born, with the ritual ceremony being called the Cajón de Muertos, where a very important aspect is the practice of eating with the spirits. Animal sacrifices is central to Santeria, which is often sacrificed as food. For Santeria, without these sacrifices, it is believed that the religion would die out, as sacrifice is considered essential for initiation into the faithful community and the ordination of priests. As for the animals used, they are allegedly said to be killed by cutting the carotid arteries with a single knife stroke, in a similar way to other religious methods of slaughter, to make the animal die humanly without suffering. These sacrificial animals, which could be pigeons, doves, ducks, guinea pigs, goats, sheep and turtles, or chicken, which is the most common, would then be cooked and eaten following all Santeria rituals, except of course during the healing and death rites, where the sickness is believed to pass into the dead animal, which is also a thing in Santeria. Eating the sacrificed animal is considered sharing with the Orisha, who only consumes the animal's blood while the worshippers eat the meat. However, this particular Santeria practice of animal sacrifice had also met opposition in the past, with a notable occasion. For example, in a landmark 1993 case, there would be a controversy against the Santeria spiritual religion for the use of animals for their ritual sacrifices, as some people who practice the religion within and outside of Cuba opposed such ritual. In the Supreme Court case in 1993, a justice personnel, when talking about the religion, would say, "The Santeria faith teaches that every individual has a destiny from God, a destiny fulfilled with the aid and energy of the Orishas. The basis of the Santeria religion is the nurture of a personal relationship with the Orishas, and one of the principal forms of devotion is animal sacrifice. According to Santeria teaching, the Orishas are powerful but not immortal. They depend on the sacrifice for survival." The end result was that the practice of animal sacrifice within a religious context was ruled by the Supreme Court to be a protected activity, hence allowing for the ritual sacrifices to continue. In 2009, a Santeria priest in Texas would file a lawsuit after city officials said he could no longer perform animal sacrifices as part of his religious practice. The city claimed that animal sacrifices jeopardized public health and violated its slaughterhouse and animal cruelty ordinances. However, the priest would claim he had been sacrificing animals for over a decade without any problems, and was willing to quadruple back the remains of the slaughtered animals, even talking of finding a safe method of disposal. In August of 2009, a US court would rule in his favor, which meant that he and his fellow devotees could practice their religion even at their homes without being afraid of being fined, arrested, or taken to court. To some extent, it is often alleged that Santeria includes magical practice, although this magical system is always based upon interaction with and understanding of the Orishas. However, there have also been multiple reports of those who practice Santeria with black magic. Of course, behind closed doors or away from the public eyes, with these people allegedly said to use cats and dogs as ingredients for their dark spells. But I must say that the animal sacrifices arguably may not even be the darkest part of the Santeria ritual.
Vamos.
The percussion instruments are at the heart of most forms of dances, but the extremely complex drum rhythms used in Santeria's rituals are said to actually reproduce the tonal language of Orishas, allowing direct communication between the worshippers and their gods. In combination with chanting, the drums used are said to actually lull listeners into a trance that supposedly pulls their spirits into a different dimension, allowing the Orishas to possess their empty bodies. This central ritual is called the Toque de Santo, also known as bembe, in which practitioners drum, sing and dance to invoke or call down an orisha to stay in contact with them by possessing one of their members before proceeding to communicate and eat with them. And what happens if during the ritual one of the members becomes possessed? Well, the answer might not be what you are thinking, since some of the aspects of being possessed while practicing is kept secret. Join me, let's watch the ritual possession of a Santeria worshipper and what it truly means.
O sea, no se va a estar, ¿me entiendes?
No.
Ah, bueno.
No problem.
Ah, bueno. Ya, los tambores. ¿Usted los tambores? Vamos a ver, hermano, vamos a ver.
Depressing. Un euro. Italia por escuela. Ayuda my father. Asteros. Ayuda my father. Bolsebuk. Spanish. Infart. Rayo. Are you please? Boom.
What is this? From the video, we can see a young man dressed only in red shorts and a bandana, with blood splattered on his chest. The man is seated and allegedly circled by some priests while groaning and grunting in a strange tune and banging his bare feet on the ground. While a set of drums were being brought to be played, we can see one of the topless priests spraying the man with water from behind. It would be few moments later when the man would break a hard bottle on his head, seemingly without a scratch, as one of the priests then proceed to hold his hands upwards for some reason. Was the man truly possessed? Well, the answers might vary depending on your own belief, but if your answer was yes, then you are mostly right. You see, at first, watching this video without any context, many people who had no knowledge of Santeria had thought of this whole process as a demonic exorcism being about to be performed. Going further to see what people thought about this ritual, that was when I discovered the actual truth or horror behind what we just watched. It was also these two comments which stood out to me that made me go deeper into making months of research for this video. The first reply was, "This is not a demonic exorcism, it's a Santeria ritual." Then a more detailed reply from someone else was more explanatory. "This is a Santeria ritual and the man is trans-possessed. It's considered an honor to be possessed by the orishas, and for those involved, it's a beautiful and spiritual thing, and when it happens, it means luck for the entire community. The blood is most likely from a farm animal, which is killed quickly and humanely in ritual sacrifice and with the blood drained, then later cooked and eaten by the people involved as an offering to the worshipped deities. it is considered an honor to be possessed by the Orishas. Of course, this statement made me stop in my tracks. You see, for believers in every religion, one thing is usually common. We have good spirits and we have evil spirits with malicious intent. Hence, it begs the question, what do you think happens to a human that allows him or herself to be possessed by the Orishas? You see, it's one thing to worship the Orishas as a form of family religion that had been passed down from generations. It's also one thing to be possessed by an entity or spirit without consent in any sort of religion, as being possessed is generally something to avoid. But it's another thing to consent to be actually possessed by a deity, such as the Orisha. Santeria is very much a mutual relationship, as the Orishas need to be constantly nourished by the offerings of food, worshipped and also praised by humans in various rituals, if that to continue to exist and help the worshippers throughout their life. These Orishas or mortal spirits or deities are said to serve as messengers between the human world and the divine, and can be perceived in the physical world by the initiates, also known as the Eyabo or Eyawo, respectively called the slave and the bride of the Orishas. The whole community is said to share in their presence when they are called upon to possess a spirit by a variety of methods, including trances and possession, divination, ritual, and even sacrifices. In Santeria, it is believed that each human has a personal link to a particular Orisha who influences their personality. Various myths are told about these Orisha, who are regarded as subservient or subordinates to Olodumare, who, like I said before, in the Yoruba religion, is a transcendent creator deity, or simply God, as known by most Christians. Olodumare is believed to be the ultimate source of Ache, which is a supernatural force permeating the universe that can be manipulated through this ritual action. Practitioners venerate the Orisha at altars, either in the home or in the casa, which is the temple, and which is run by a Santero, who is a priest, or a Santera, who is a priestess. Ironically, in Santeria, if you don't get possessed by an Orisha, it's believed you've done something wrong, as possession is the intent of the initiation ceremony for Santeros and Santeras. After a sacred substance have been implanted in the initiate's head, they are now considered in direct communication with an Orisha, as the initiate allows their body to be used by the demigod to communicate with the rest of the community, though the possessed are typically said to have no memory of the experience afterwards. Hence, rather than being called a possession, it is correctly called a subjection, as one voluntarily submits to demons. Yes, you heard me right. The truth is that these Orishas are not just spirits. These are demons being paraded as saints. Since the Middle Ages, in the Roman Catholicism ritual, which is a religion that the Creyentes have adopted some of their elements, true demonic or satanic possession has been characterized by the following 4 characteristics. Firstly, manifestation of superhuman strength. Secondly, speaking in tongues or languages that the possessed human cannot possibly know if they weren't possessed. Thirdly, revelation of knowledge, whether distant or hidden, which the possessed can also not possibly know if not possessed. And lastly, blasphemous rage, obscene hand gestures, using profanity and an aversion to holy symbols, names, relics or places, and all of these characteristics would play out in this major Santeria ritual. In a religious or spiritual way, it is also said that during this same ritual, the Orisha may seize the head of a person or mount them as if they were a horse and make the possessed person to perform spectacular dances and to pass on various messages directly from the Orisha to the community members during the ritual process. Let's continue watching the video and see what the communication between these demons and humans looks like. During this stage of the demonic possession ritual, the man would continuously jerk his body frantically before forcing a holy Christian crucifix down his throat as his eyes widens, piercing the skin underneath his throat. Something which I really don't think a normal human would be able to do. In a demonic tone, he speaks as he seems to pass a message saying,
It's like pressing in Venezuela. Up at the box. People pressing right up. With my caballo pressing.
even though the roots of this very religion originated from West Africa, today there are many Americans who practice Santeria, and being a member of the temple within Santeria requires initiation, in which a charge is levied depending on the client, and it is often said to be equivalent to a year's wage in some places. So basically, you pay a fortune to become a priest or priestess within the Santeria religion. A santero or high priest traditionally presides over rituals and ceremonies, and to become a santero, one must pass this series of tests and requirements prior to initiation. And not just that, each initiation varies in its details, and which are often hidden from non-initiates. A process which is said to take 7 days plus 2 days of preparatory ritual, and in which initiates regularly take offerings to their orishas. Other sorts of training includes divinatory work, herbalism and counseling, with the orishas determining whether a candidate for priesthood has passed the test or failed. Most santeros have studied for a long time to become part of the priesthood. It is rarely open to those who are not part of the society or culture. For many years, Santeria was kept secret and limited to those of African ancestry, and according to the Church of Santeria, they would say, over time, African people and European people began to have children of mixed ancestries, and as such, the doors to Lucumí slowly and reluctantly for many people opened to non-African participants. But even then, the practice of Lucumí was something you did because your family did it. It was tribal, and in many families, it continues to be tribal. At its core, Santeria Lucumí is not an individual practice, is not a personal part, and is something you inherit and pass on to others as elements of a culture that survived the tragedy of slavery in Cuba. You learned Santeria because it was what your people did. You practice Santeria with others in the community because it serves the greater whole. But then I ask, for a religion that blends different spiritual beliefs, and knowing that the crucifix is probably the most important symbol of holiness in Christianity, the same religion, they have adopted some of their elements. Then why use the crucifix in a way that seems derogatory, as was seen from the video of the possessed man, or should I say, demonically subjected young man who forced it down his throat and bent it so it hooked underneath his mouth? Of course, I also said earlier that Santeria has many variants and other similar religious groups with similar rituals. For example, in Venezuela, there is the Quibayo, also known as the cult of Maria Leonza, which began in the 20th century as a blend of African, indigenous, and Catholic beliefs, very similar to the Santeria religion. But unlike the orishas that are revered in the Cuban Santeria, there are 3 powerful deities, with the central deity called Maria Leonza, regarded as a queen with pale skin, green eyes, and surrounded by animals. She is often depicted as a naked, muscular indigenous woman riding a large tapir, standing on a snake. Leonza, high above her head, holds a female pelvis, representing fertility. As a woman of strength, she is revered as the goddess of nature, love, peace, and harmony. Just like Santeria, in Quibayo, worshippers go to the mountain during the pilgrimage to seek strength, healing, and to contact the souls of the dead during these rituals, where they all lay in circles on the floor. And during these rituals, several other spirits are also worshipped alongside Catholic saints and Virgin Mary. And as the songs from the drum continues, regardless of the gender, there is the shamans who act as mediums between the pilgrims and the spirits, and usually demand that the devotees enter into trance states which often lead them to speak in tongues or harm and mutilate themselves in those rituals after being demonically subjected. We can see the link between these rituals of demonic possession, as many members from other religions native to Latin America and Venezuela are present, including those from Santería, where during the rituals they employ blessings, curses, drumming, cigar smoking, tobacco chewing, and liquor during these yearly rituals. Now, even though some worshippers or partakers of this particular ritual might claim that it's just a harmless ritual, most of us can agree that there is nothing light or harmless about this particular dark ritual practice of demonic possession, and not necessarily the religion itself. The thought of knowingly inviting a demon to inhabit your body is just a passageway to invite evil at any time within your home, and attachment to the body is always difficult, but not impossible to get rid of. What other spiritual havoc or negative impact this ritual practice, and not necessarily the religion, had done to individuals, families, communities, or even some secret societies who might have used the possession for a sinister purpose, is a thought that is very haunting. Christian views of Santería have been largely negative, and in Cuba, it has faced much opposition from the Roman Catholic clerical establishment over the centuries, and with many Cuban intellectuals and academics also taking a dim view of Santería. Opposition to the religion is also evident outside of Cuba. For example, when the International Afro-Caribbean Festival in Veracruz was launched in 1994, it showcased art and ritual by Mexican santeros and santeras. Although this brought public protests from Roman Catholic organizations who regarded such rites as satanic, and animal welfare groups who deemed the sacrifices to be inhumane. The festival's organizers yielded to the pressure, cutting the Santería elements of the festival by 1998. Pervasive stereotypes would also link Santería to criminal activity, and these rituals for self-protection have been adopted by various groups involved in narcotics trafficking within the United States, making people like me wonder what the true purpose of the dark rituals involved in this spiritual religion actually stands for, or what its true purpose is. But as expected, the Santeros had defended the ritual process, as they claim that it not only brings the worshipper closer to their Orisha if they are possessed by them, but also makes them more aware of the presence of the Orisha within them. In the past, and possibly in this present day, Santeros and Santeras have also often been accused of financially exploiting their initiates and clients, and with accusations such as these, sometimes made by other practitioners of Santería itself. Various practitioners have also found that their involvement in Santería has strained their relationship with spouses or other family members who are not involved, and in some cases, adherents have abandoned Santería to join other religious movements they feel would give them the positive spiritual food and energy they desire. It begs the question, for a spiritual ritual with no written scripture guiding this practice, having so many secretive initiation process, using the crucifix in a derogatory way, merging a polytheistic religion with a monotheistic one, with each having different beliefs, and allowing oneself to be demonically possessed, which is totally against the practice of the earlier mentioned religions, especially the Christian religion, the same religion they have also adopted some of their elements. I ask again, what does this ritual actually represent? Deeply devoted Christians and other religion practitioners all over the world would say that darkness and light do not mix. And if that is true in such case, then what would you make out of this dark ritual? As some followers have also been said to incorporate the elements of black magic or voodoos in their ritual practices to inflict pain and curses on their targets, including some worshippers who adorn their altars with animal remains and fresh blood, as well as human skulls and bones. And while it is legal to own human remains in most cases, I would also let you know that the difficulty in acquiring those items had also led some practitioners to acquire them through other means, such as stealing them from mausoleums or even digging up graves of dead people. Then what does such action say about this ritual, or is it just the action of some evil-minded ones? Then I guess that the practice of this ritual, whether it is to be used for good or bad purposes, depends on the intention of the worshipper. But also in the past, it has been reported that some extreme Santeria practices had employed the use of infant remains or stillborn fetuses to invoke the Orishas and to cast spells and curses. Even with this type of fetish practice, few practitioners would, however, tell you that Santeria is generally a positive spiritual practice. However, there has also been a report in the past on police recovering the body of a 2-year-old girl stolen from a grave and used in a Santeria ritual. Another report has also mentioned about how customs agents did stop a pair of women from attempting to smuggle human fetuses into the US from Cuba in their luggage. The fetuses, they would later confess, were given to them by a Santeria priest. But I would also say that it's more than likely that these cases are the extreme of the Santeria ritual practices and possibly in no way represent the average Santeria practitioner who seeks to worship for the positive spiritual experience and nothing more. However, with absolute respect to all religion and seeing no one as better than the other, I then ask, are the rituals involved with the Santeria spiritual possession a normal religious practice like every other religion that seeks to worship, heal, or achieve divination? Or perhaps something just evil and much darker? Today, almost 80% of the Cuban population practice Santeria, which is sometimes described as the national religion. And if you speak with anyone involved in the practice of Santeria, they will likely tell you it is only a force for good, a way for the community to connect with their ancestors by carrying on ancient traditions and by invoking the Orishas for guidance. For some people, it is a positive experience, as the white magic used to cast spells are said to be mostly for love, wealth, career progression, and protection. And although practitioners would claim it is completely safe and does not bring harm to anyone, there has also been stories on how these spells, when used on a person, can open the door for some unknown evil spirits to attach itself to a person it desires, effectively dominating the person's thoughts and actions in the desired direction. For some, it never ends well, as later down the line, some practitioners who had decided to change faith and embrace a new religion had gone on to suffer physical, psychological, or spiritual attacks, making the whole process seem more like a spiritual bondage rather than a true spiritual experience. But one thing that is sure is that while it is true that the tradition of Santeria rituals can have some element of mysterious and occultic practices, it has been marred with dark mystery due to the secrecy that guards the esoteric segments of the ritual practices. And although most people are appalled by the rituals of animal sacrifices and demonic possessions offered during ceremonies, the most important thing to always remember is that no matter what type of belief you have as a person, or whether you are an atheist, as far as another's doesn't resort to crime or any sort of moral decadence, we should always try to respect other people's spiritual faith and religious beliefs.
now for me.